Friends, today we'll be talking about the partitioning of Bengal, which took place in the year 1905. Now, this is very different from the creation of Bangladesh, which took place in 1971, so you don't have to get confused with it. The partitioning of Bengal took place in 1905 on the proposition of Lord Curzon, in which he made in 1903, but it came into effect in 1905. Now, what happened as a result of the partitioning? Now, Bengal was the largest province of India at that time, and they decided to divide. The British decided to divide it into two provinces, namely West Bengal and East Bengal. West Bengal became a Hindu majority area, and East Bengal became a Muslim dominated or majority area. Now, West Bengal had a population of around 54 million people, out of which 42 million were Hindus and 12 million were Muslims. And East Bengal, which also included Assam, had a population of 31 million people, of which 12 million were Hindus and 18 million were Muslims. Three important districts which were earlier part of West Bengal, that is Dhaka, Mymensingh and Chittagong, became part of East Bengal as a result of this partitioning. Now, to have a better understanding of the area, let us look at this map. Now, if you look at this map, see, this is Bangladesh. So this is the modern day map, but earlier the Bangladesh province, the province of Bengal, had been a huge province, including this entire area. So Calcutta and the other part of Bengal was made part of West Bengal, and Assam, which is somewhere here, then Chittagong and Dhaka, and this is Chittagong, this was Mymensingh somewhere here, and Assam was here. So all this was made part of East Bengal. Let us look at why Bengal was partitioned. Bengal was partitioned because of geographical reasons, for administrative reasons, and according to some, for political reasons as well. Now, the British had come forth with two reasons. They said that they had taken such a measure because of their geographical reasons and administrative reasons. Now, geographically, undoubtedly, Bengal was the largest province of India at that time, and to govern it, in entirety, as one single unit, was becoming difficult and challenging task for the British government. So, they also believed that the capacity of its growth and revenue generation was not being harnessed sufficiently. So, they had to divide it. It was inevitable that Bengal would be divided. They also came forth with another reason, and they said that they had taken this step because of administrative reasons. Now, this province was home to around 85 million people, and now to look after this huge massive population was a great feat, was a very big responsibility, and to give this responsibility in the hands of a single governor was unjust. So it had to be divided so that it would be properly governed. It was believed in many circles that Bengal was a territory, though it had a lot of resources and a lot of capacity for growth. It was being ill governed by the British government. So they had to take this step and divide it. Whereas the Hindus, they believe that the British had taken this step for political reasons. There were sinister motives behind this division of Bengal. Now, here you will have to understand that prior to division, the United Bengal was a Hindu-dominated province where the Hindus were, in the seat of governance. They had occupied all the significant posts, and all the insignificant and minor posts were given to Muslims or the other communities. So that they were in complete control of that area, and they were thriving happily. So when such a measure was taken from the side of the British, they felt that it was to counter the growing Hindu threat, which the British might have assumed that it was coming from Bengal, because that was an area where the Hindus were in majority and were gaining power economically, socially, and in all the spheres they were gaining strength. So they had to counter that Hindu threat, and for countering that Hindu threat, they had to partition it. And for that, they started using their age old methods, which was the divide and rule policy, using one community against the other. So in doing so, that is in partitioning Bengal, they had favored the Muslims over the Hindus. Now let's look at the results. What were the results of the partitioning of Bengal? Number one, the Muslims. This was the community that was the most relieved, as I mentioned earlier. Now there were chances that they would gain more opportunities because East Bengal was a Muslim majority province, and there were chances that they would now occupy, or they would now gain opportunities in various fields, even in education. Now it was an end to their subjugation, and it could also be a road to their political economic liberty. So they were very much satisfied and relieved. Now this step also improved the Muslim relationship with the British. This was the first step that drew the Muslims closer to the British after the War of Independence 1857. There was a lot of mistrust between the two communities, but this step which the British took, favoring the Muslims, made them friendlier towards the British. Now, Hindus, on the other hand, were completely upset. They were distraught. They felt that their rights had been snatched away from them in one way or the other, and this was done in order to weaken their unity, their majority, their strength. So they came forward with a movement which is called as a Swadeshi movement. This movement was basically to boycott the British cloth that was coming from England, from Britain. So that cloth was burnt on streets openly in bonfires. They completely boycotted all the British goods. So the British industries suffered, the imports from Britain suffered, and they also began a series of terrorist outbursts or attacks towards the British government. Now the Swadeshi movement is important because it gets asked as a separate question as to what was the Swadeshi movement. You'll get it as a 4-mark question, so you have to understand what it is and you can write it down. How it started, when it started, you have to mention that it was a direct outcome of the partitioning of Bengal. Now, this division of Bengal was completely unacceptable for the Hindus, and so they tried their level best to do whatever to revert this decision. They tried even to assassinate the Viceroy Lord Minto, and then there began a series of strikes, and the British imports, they fell. So these were the results of the partitioning of Bengal, or the division of Bengal. And these steps that were taken by the Hindus had grown to such an extent that they they aggravated matters, and they made matters worse, and the British government finally was forced to revert its decision and annul the partition of Bengal, and this annulment took place in the year 1911. So you have to keep that in mind also. And this annulment took place under Lord Hardinge, who was the viceroy at that time. Lord Hardinge. The Muslims were very much offended by the decision taken by the British, that is, annulment of the partition of Bengal, because they had started to trust the British. Now this was again a place or an event which showed it to the Muslims that in order to have a strong footing in the subcontinent, they will have to have their own party. And Muslim League had already come into being at that time. That was in 1906. But they understood it by the reaction that they saw from the Hindus, that it was now important for the Muslims to stand separately and to fight for their rights, as was described by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan in his two-nation theory. So I hope this was clear to you till here. This was all about Bengal getting partitioned into two parts, the West Bengal and East Bengal. If there are any questions, you can post them down in the comments section. And if this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.